Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this week's episode of The Contented Narrative, where we will be looking at War Horse by Michael Mumpergo. It was published in 1982 and it was adapted to screen in 2011. I am also very aware that there is a stage show as well, which is on my bucket list to see. I do really want to catch it. Eventually I will. So we will be looking at three things as usual. We'll be looking at how good is the book, how good is the film, and of course, how well does the film take from the book. So first things first, the film. Now, this film is heartbreaking and uplifting all at the same time. For the most part, it follows the life of the horse Joey as he grows up. He goes to work on a farm, then he's bought. So we're literally seeing the narrative through Joey's eyes, who is the horse. He's bought to go to war, then it follows his journey through the war and his different owners over time. And honestly, this film is brilliantly directed. You're with that horse you're with Joey the entire time, and he is a character in his own right. He's not just there for the plot, he is a character. You also see how much of a harrowing experience it is through Joey's time in the war as a horse, but also through Albert's time in the war as well. And then when they end up together at the end, like, if you don't cry, I don't know who you are, because it is just so moving. It really is. When they're reunited, it's honestly so beautiful. Now, the final shot of Albert and Joey coming back from war to his parents' farm honestly brings tears to my eyes. It is just magical. The whole story is magical. It makes you feel from the very second you turn it on to the very second you turn it off. Beautifully directed. I mean, it is a Spielberg classic. You can't go wrong. And this film gets a 9 out of 10 from me. It does, and I cannot wait to one day see this film on stage as well. Well, see this book on stage. Now the book. The book is amazing. I mean, what do you expect from Mumpergo? Even though he's considered like a child author, he is just phenomenal. The fact that, again, he writes the narrative from Joey's perspective. You know, he's very good at he's very tactful at getting children to look at dealing with loss and other serious issues, and to bring that into their lives as well, and to say that it's okay for this to happen, but also looking at things like World War II and World War One. Obviously this one's World War One, but looking at, like, writing all of these is just honestly brilliant. And the fact, again, he's writing from a horse's perspective, and you really feel for Joey, and you want Joey to be okay, and you feel for him like he is a character, and he is a character. Whereas obviously sometimes if you're reading maybe something else about the horses in World War One, you don't get to feel for them as you normally would, because they're not given this character, as it were. Now, the fact that he writes Joey as a character and you experience everything through Joey's eyes is just a stroke of brilliance. It really is. And the beautiful innocence of the thoughts of Joey and his drive to those that he loves is just, it just leaves you feeling so happy and so full and so contented. And I would recommend this book to anybody. It gets an 8 out of 10 from me. But again, just be careful, because some kids might not be able to handle it, but it is a brilliant, brilliant book. So the plot. Now, the book starts from the horse's perspective as he's a young colt, sold at the market, torn from his mum, and moved to the farm alongside an older horse. And he's also only sold for 3 guineas in the book. In the film, it starts with watching the horse be born and then being sold at market, then taken to a farm where he's the only horse, and he's for some unknown reason bought for 10 guineas, which is going to cause problems later, unfortunately. So, in the film, Albert, who is the son of the farmer, takes over looking after him and calls him Joey. And Albert comes in the book as well and takes to looking after our young Joey. So Albert becomes Joey's best friend, as it were. He looks after Joey, Joey looks after him. And you see the bond in both of this between Albert and Joey. And Albert even teaches Joey like a little call. So when he does this call, Joey comes running to him, and it's beautiful, like honestly beautiful. And the fact that you know what's coming and you know they're going to be broken up and split apart, it breaks your heart. So in the book, a few years pass, and then Albert's father puts a bet on that he can get Joey to plough a field. Now bear in mind, Joey's just a normal horse. He's not like a plough horse. So he pushes Albert to get Joey to do it. But obviously they still have the other horse to plough if needed. And he makes it, like, the dad makes it quite clear, if Joey doesn't do this, Joey's dead or sold off. He's no use to us. In the film, however, Joey has to plough the field as he's the only horse, and the family are relying on the ploughed field to plant some veg to make money to pay back the rent, because unfortunately, as we know, he's paid 10 guineas for this horse. So in the book, Joey does plough the field alongside the other horse, does successfully well, absolutely brilliant, wins the bet, gets to live on. In the film, he almost doesn't do it, but due to a heavy rainfall and Albert pushing him to do it, they're able to plough the field, which means that they can keep the farm. However, we do then get heavy storms later on, which almost completely wipes out the veg that's in the turnips that they've planted. So in the film as well, this whole ploughing thing was seen as like a day out for everyone to come and see this normal horse plough this field and so forth. And now in both, we're at war. So in both, Albert's dad sells Joey to Captain Nichols because he needs the money for the farm. It's as simple as that. And he does it behind Albert's back as well, which causes a big rift later on. So Albert arrives just as this finishes the transaction and tries to join up, so he won't be apart from Joey. However, he's too young at this point. So now Joey has joined the army. However, Captain Nichols is a very kind man and assures that personally he will look after Joey, he will make sure that Joey is okay, and he will keep Albert updated on how Joey is doing. Now, we get an insight in the book that Captain Nichols doesn't actually agree with the cavalry charging in a war with machine guns, and he believes that it's an outdated thing. We don't really see this as much in the film. We only really hear this insight in the book. So we get the odd look in the film, but nothing's outrightly said. Now, there's a practice manoeuvre in both, and Joey pulls the heads of all the horses, but there's also a connection between him and a black stallion called Topthorn. Now, Topthorn is only named in the book. We don't get his name in the film, but we do see the bond that Joey and Topthorn has formed, and they do become pretty much best friends, like forever. So in the book, as they cross to France, the cavalry see the wounded waiting to go back to England, and it sombers the regiment because they realise that this might not be a war that's over at Christmas. However, in the film, they don't see this. So again, in the book, Joey comes across his first battle as they find the enemy completely by accident. And as they charge, Captain Nichols is killed, but the English win, and Joey is still with the English. However, in the film, they're planning an attack on a German camp. They attack and lose. Captain Nichols is still killed, but Joey and Topthorn had now ended up in the care of the Germans and pulling ambulances. Now, we also see as well in the film, Albert receives the drawings and news of Captain Nichols' death back in Devon, as he fears now the worst for Joey, that Joey is probably either dead or is dying. Now, in the book, he's given another rider, because obviously he's still with the English at this point, so he's given another rider who's really kind, looks after him so well, but can't ride. And they don't experience the battle for a very long while. And in the book as well, they're now going across no man's land. So they're still with the English, and they're now charging across no man's land towards the German trenches, because that makes sense. But in the film at this point, 2 German soldiers have taken Joey and Topthorn and deserted to a windmill where they are found by the Germans and shot, but Joey and Topthorn are not found. However, they are found the next day by a little French girl called Emily, who looks after them for a little bit. Now, in the book, after charging over no man's land and into the German line, Joey and Topthorn are captured along with the humans, and now they use the stretcher horses. So in the book, they're looked after at night by Emily. Obviously, in the film, she's got Sol looking after. In the book, it's only at night, and her grandfather. But they pull the wounded during the day, and they become almost like a symbol to the Germans, and the Germans absolutely love Joey and Topthorn. Now, in the book, the horses are not needed because now the lines are moving somewhere else. So the horses are given to Emily by the regiment, basically. However, that doesn't last long, and they're then captured. They're then taken physically and put to pull guns. Now, in the film, they have been forcefully taken from Emily and made to pull guns as well. But they are you fear, because Emily's not very well, you fear that she might not last very long. So in the film, so in both they're now pulling guns and getting weaker. They have one German as well who's nice to them and is trying to look after them and make sure that they're okay. And in the book, they appear to be pulling guns a lot longer. They almost die several times, but somehow manage to pull through. In the film, they're not pulling guns for that long. However, when you think about it, actually, the film lasts the same amount of time as the book, and they're taken at the beginning of the war and they come back at the end of the war. So it must be more of a passage of time, but obviously it doesn't seem that long in the film. However, in both, Top Thorne does pass away during a bombardment on the German troops by the British. So in both, Joey is now frightened and he runs into no man's land. Now in the film, he gets entangled in the barbed wire and then is released by a German and an English soldier working together. The English soldier gets Joey by a coin toss. However, in the book, Joey's just injured and is stuck in no man's land. But you still get the one German, one English man arguing over who should get him. Again, the English win the coin toss for Joey, which is absolutely amazing. And it's quite a nice little thing to see these two soldiers that might have been friends in another life, but obviously because they're told that they're enemies, they are enemies. So also at this point in the film as well, we've seen Albert at war on the front line as he goes over no man's land into the German trenches and then is caught in a gas attack and ends up blind. So then he ends up in a field hospital behind the lines. Now in the book, Joey is brought to a veterinary hospital and by chance is looked after by Albert. So in the film, Albert has joined and he's on the front lines. In the book, Albert has joined but is at the veterinary hospital and looking after the wounded animals, essentially. So in the film, Joey's going to be put down, but Albert hears about a miraculous horse and uses his call to get Joey to come to him. And when he does, everyone realises that in actuality, this is a miracle horse and they clean him up and they look after him. So once they're reunited in the film, everyone works to keep them together and to keep him alive. Something similar as well happens in the book, because in the book, Joey contracts tetanus, which is normally always a death sentence for horses. So he almost dies, but because everyone is like, no, this is Joey, this is Albert's horse, Joey, everyone puts together, looks after him, and he pulls through. And he's absolutely, it's honestly amazing. He's, yeah. So he is then sort of led back into the war slowly as well. So he ends up sort of like pulling ambulance and stretchers again once he realises that he's actually better. Now in the film, the war is announced as over, but any horses not owned by officers have to be sold off. So the whole hospital team gather to raise some money to buy Joey back. This happens in the book, but as I said, a little bit later because Joey is kind of slowly pulled back into the war to pull things. So anyway, now we're sort of at the point where Joey is now being sold as well in the book. And the bidding starts, and just as it looks as if Albert is going to win, because obviously the whole veterinary area in the book put money forward for Joey as well, Emily's granddad has arrived and outbids everyone and wins Joey. So there's then a little bit where we understand that Emily unfortunately did pass away very soon after. But then Emily's granddad realizes that Albert is Joey's best friend and Joey is Albert's horse. So he gives Joey to him. In the book, he sells him for a penny. In the film, he just gives it to him. And the film ends with Joey and Albert coming back home to his parents. And you get that amazing scene. Now, the book ends with them coming back home, and then we learn that Albert got married, had kids, and had his dad. And his dad becomes a lot nicer to Joey, and it's just a sort of like nice little ending there. Now, the plot, again, like earlier with the house with the clock in its walls, it's very, very close, and at times it does sort of touch in, and you can see it, and it does take the basic points, and it is really good. But obviously it just does veer off to one side in regards to, well, the film narrative, essentially. I love how the book was told from the horse's perspective. And so the film did try to stay with Joey the entire time. I love how you get so close to the wire as well, and how it seems a lot more harrowing in the film than it does in the book. But the plot is quite close. I will give it that. So it does get a 6 out of 10 from me. If you agree or disagree with anything that I have said, please do leave it below in the comments. Don't forget to click subscribe and like to be alerted for the next video. But until then, remember to always keep it contento.